Coming up on today's show, we have a major Dallas Goedert trade update, and will the Philadelphia Eagles trade Bryce Huff going into or during the 2025 NFL Draft? You're watching Eagles Now by Chat Sports. My name is Chase Sr. Happy Monday, everybody. And of course, we have another loaded show coming your way, as I mentioned. But first, let's start the week off with a bang. Hope you had a great weekend. You're feeling refreshed. And here on this show, let's keep it moving. We are 111 subscribers away from 118,000 subscribers. Let's grow the family. Join the movement. If you want Eagles shows every single day year-round where you have a voice, where you stay informed, hit that sub button. And as always, go Birds. So let's begin with the latest around Dallas Goedert. He's been a big topic of conversation this offseason because he's been involved in trade talks. There was this report from Josina Anderson a couple of weeks ago that there are league sources who believe that the Eagles are holding out hope that they could get a fourth-round pick in exchange for Dallas Goedert, who's been a great player for their team and a good guy inside that locker room. And then there was this from NFL insider Jordan Schultz that the Eagles have been open to trade talks involving both Dallas Goedert and Bryce Huff, who we're going to talk about a little bit later on. And you think about the Eagles potentially moving on from Goedert, this is why a trade could happen, right? He's 30 years old. He's going into the final year of his deal here in 2025. His base salary isn't expensive. It's $1.25 million at 1.25, but he does carry a $14 million cap hit going into this season. So ideally, Philadelphia, if they do bring him back, they really want to lower that number because it's high for a player who's missed a lot of games. That's also why a trade could happen here. And if you're Goedert, it's easy to see why. Him and his agent, him and his representation would want a new deal, especially in an exploding tight end market where this position is starting to garner more attention and get some more dollars. And the Eagles' offseason plan, at least partially, has been clearing money for a lot of their young guns and young marquee players who are building blocks, who are pillars, who the Eagles have drafted and developed, who they're going to need to pay at some point soon. And you think about the Eagles' actions and their words this offseason. What did the Eagles do as part of their free agency? They signed tight end Harrison Bryant. They signed tight end Kylen Granson. Harrison Bryant, tall, lanky. He can also be used in short yardage situations. I think he's a pretty good red zone threat. And then Howie Roseman compared Kylen Granson to a player like Trey Burton, who is a smaller tight end as far as height, but a really good playmaker. He's also an excellent blocker at that position. And then when we were at the NFL Combine back a little more than a month ago, the Eagles met formally with tight ends in Indianapolis. And what Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni, and Jeffrey Lurie said last week from the NFL owners' meetings, pretty telling about the future of Goedert. They pretty much talked as though he's not going to be on this team in 2025. Now, last week, we talked about what Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni said about Goedert. Here's what Jeffrey Lurie, the owner of the team who signs off on the paycheck, said. He said whether it's C.J. Gardner-Johnson or it's Dallas Goedert or Milton Williams, whatever it is, we've got to do what's best for the franchise in terms of winning big. But for all of us, these are not names. These are human beings that we've really been through the battle with and been on the big stage with, and we enjoy them. No different than Zach Ertz. It's the way that it is. You've got to balance it all out. And the one thing is, we've got to do what we think is best in terms of roster construction, planning, and winning big. What did you notice about Lurie's quote there from the owners' meetings when asked about Goedert? He included him in a sentence with players who are already gone. C.J. Gardner-Johnson traded away. Milton Williams signed with the Patriots and got that bag. The Eagles traded Zach Ertz, which at the time was a tough move, but they were bad. They had drafted Goedert. They wanted to take over for Zach Ertz. And it became inevitable that once the Eagles didn't give Zach Ertz that contract extension, he was going to be let go. So the fact that Lurie is talking about Goedert with players who are no longer on this roster goes to show you he's probably not going to be on this team in 2025. Tim McManus, who covers the Eagles for ESPN, also said this from his owners' meetings takeaways on ESPN.com. Right now, he's on our football team. That's what Coach Nick Sirianni said last week. Right now, he's on our football team. And so Sirianni went on to laud Goedert as a player and leader, said he wants all players who contributed to the Super Bowl season back, but then added, there's more to it than that. Sirianni also said that's not the reality of the NFL. More from McManus here, money is at the root of the potential departure. The 30-year-old is in the final year of his deal, carries $14 million this season on average. The Eagles have signed a number of players to big money contracts in recent years, including Jalen Hurts, receiver A.J. Brown, running back Saquon Barkley, linebacker Zack Baun. Let me add Devontae Smith to the offensive side of the ball. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens is coming up soon, folks. You see what I'm getting at here? And then back to McManus, with only so much cash to go around, they're making some tough choices this offseason on contributors with sizable salaries who haven't been identified as core options moving forward. Goedert's injury history, he's missed 3+ games in each of the past 3 years, appears to be working against him in that regard. Outside of him taking a pay cut, it's hard to envision Goedert returning to Philly in 2025. And keep in mind, right, the word fan is short for fanatic. Goedert has been one of the top all-around tight ends in the NFL for Philadelphia, really since he came into the league out of South Dakota State. And it's emotional to let a player go who's been a big part of the Eagles' success. Making it to the Super Bowl in 2022. He was awesome in that game. Making it to the Super Bowl in 2024. He got the Eagles' offense going in the wild card round game against Green Bay. He was terrific for the rest of the playoffs. I would exercise some caution in moving off of Goedert. The Eagles haven't been able to get wide receiver 3 right, and he's served as the third receiving option behind A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But the money and the injuries and the games missed, combined with the Eagles' future plans of paying young players, Goedert is not that. It all makes sense for why they might move off of him. And that's why it seems inevitable that he's not going to return. Now, the Eagles would probably be open to having Goedert back, but it's going to have to be at a much lower number. And I don't know if Goedert wants to play at a lower number, probably his final opportunity to get a contract, and the tight end market is exploding here. That's another issue, which was also fueled the other day by the contract extension for Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals, because elite tight ends have become such fantastic bargains in the NFL. Think about how tight ends are utilized, the numbers that they put up, the importance that they have. Yet when you compare the salaries of tight ends to wide receivers now getting well north of $30 million per season with a lot of guaranteed money, yet sometimes they don't have the importance or play the same roles at tight end who can also block in the run game and in the pass game and catch passes. That's why this tight end position has become a bargain, but the market's starting to shift a little bit, and the tight end market late last week was reset because Trey McBride with the Arizona Cardinals inked a 4-year, $76 million contract, average annual value checking in at $19 million per season, and he got $43 million in guaranteed money. This is a former second-round pick out of Colorado State who's blossomed, who's developed, and he's gotten better each of his first 3 years in the NFL. You know, in 2022 with Arizona, was only targeted 39 times. 29 catches, 265 yards. At that point, Zach Ertz was still the tight end 1 going into the season. And then in 2023, McBride really came onto the scene. Agile mover. He can break tackles, pick up yards after the catch. He hasn't really been a huge touchdown scoring guy, but he's turned into an awesome weapon for Kyler Murray. And in 2023, targeted more than 100 times, 81 catches, 825 yards. And then this past year, breakout year, and with him going into the final year of his contract because he was a second-round pick, the Cardinals pay up, and they pay up for a really good player who I think is only going to continue to get better. 147 targets last year as the go-to option for Kyler Murray, 111 catches, and more than 1,100 yards. And so where will Goedert play in 2025? You think about the tight end market exploding, the salary cap hit of $14 million, his age, the injuries, what the Eagles have done. Let me know down in the comments section. Goedert's future. Is it with the Eagles? Type PHI. Is it with a different team? I want you to type O down in the comment section right now. Plenty more to get to here on today's Philadelphia Eagles now. But before we continue to push forward on today's program, I want to tell you about a brand new sponsor that we're welcoming on board here at Chat Sports, and that is Brunt. I just got a new pair of work boots. I absolutely love them. These are fantastic. They're the Marin work boots, and you can see for yourself what Brunt has to offer at bruntworkwear.com/chat. Now, a lot of you don't know this about me, but I actually, in addition to talking about football, love woodworking. Woodshop was my favorite class back in high school. I love building things, creating things, turning projects into something that you can have forever and be proud of. You can make stuff for other people. And what I'm showing you right here, after my mom passed away in 2018, she told me before she passed that whenever you see a butterfly, think of me. So I actually made this table in honor of her and to remember her. And now it's in my bedroom with a couple of pictures of us with another butterfly on there. I would burn that butterfly on the tabletop, sanded it down, put some stain on it, put some legs, fully built that table. And I've continued my passion for woodworking. But the issue is when I'm woodworking, or if you're working on a project, call it putting a deck together, building a house, you name it, it's that we're on our feet all the time. So we need comfortable, durable, good-looking boots. That's why I'm excited to tell you about our brand new sponsor, Brunt. These boots that I have, the most comfortable work boots I've ever worn. And you can finally have durable work boots that are just as comfortable as your sneakers. Join over 500,000 other customers and join the Brunt family today. Brunt lets you try the boots on the job risk-free, and all their products have free shipping. Brunt's best-selling Marin boots are not only built for the toughest job sites, they're completely waterproof. Whether it's rain, mud, or standing water, your feet stay dry. From oily workshop floors to muddy farm fields to a workshop that I'm in quite often. These 6-inch soft toe boots built for workers across a variety of trades. And it's not just about work boots, right? They offer a full range of high-performance gear built for tough jobs. From heavy-duty work pants to weather-resistant jackets, Brunt designs durable, reliable workwear for people like you and I to keep you protected and productive in any condition. Now, Brunt didn't just make a durable work boot. They reinvented comfort for the hardest workers out there who are looking for affordable products. So for a limited time only, our listeners get $10 off at Brunt by using the code CHAT at checkout. Just head to bruntworkwear.com, use the code CHAT, you're all set to save $10. Even better, Brunt lets you try all of their products on the job risk-free, and after you purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. So please support our show. Tell them that Philadelphia Eagles Now, Chase Sr., and Chat Sports sent you. We'll put this information down below in the comment section and in the description of today's Philadelphia Eagles Now. All right, let's continue to move forward on today's show. What a busy offseason it's been for the Philadelphia Eagles after winning Super Bowl 59. And one move that I think could happen as we go into the NFL draft, or maybe even during the NFL draft, is a Bryce Huff trade. Now, last offseason, in that headline offseason for Howie Roseman, in which he made a bevy of moves which helped propel the Eagles to winning the Super Bowl, Philadelphia signed Huff to a 3-year, $51.5 million contract. It didn't work out. Saquon Barkley in that signing was a massive hit. Zack Baun ended up being a first-team All-Pro, finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. Bringing back C.J. Gardner-Johnson really helped that Eagles defense, the leadership, the big playability, the physicality, the confidence, and the swagger. Mekhi Becton at right guard was a fantastic player for Philadelphia, one of the top interior offensive linemen in the game, and at the price that the Eagles signed him to, $3 million, he ended up being a steal for this Eagles team. Bryce Huff was not that. I mean, 3 years, $51.5 million, $34 million in guaranteed money, just having 2.5 sacks with his playing time having decreased throughout the year to the point where he wasn't even active in the Super Bowl. It was a whiff by Howie Roseman. There's no doubt about it. He would probably tell you that behind closed doors. And I thought what was telling was that right from the get-go, there were murmurs. There were conversations that Bryce Huff wasn't having a good training camp. Bryce Huff wasn't having a good preseason, wasn't understanding Vic Fangio's scheme. Vic Fangio didn't necessarily like him because he was a stand-up pass rusher who was used to being in that three-point stance, who wasn't that good against the run. And early on, we saw that Fangio didn't trust him from the jump, didn't run with the ones a lot in training camp, played deep into the preseason because Fangio said he needed reps and to understand the scheme. And then what happened during the season? Huff's snap counts were Jekyll and Hyde. They were up and down, inconsistent, and they ended up being pretty minimal. It got to a point where in the NFL playoffs, Bryce Huff, after getting $34 million a year, or $34 million in guaranteed money, after a year in which he had 10 sacks in 2023, brought in by Philadelphia because they had that need at that edge rusher spot, was a non-factor in the postseason. Jalix Hunt rose to the occasion. He developed before our very eyes. Nolan Smith ended up being a fantastic player and made a huge leap from year 1 to year 2. 6.5 sacks in the regular season. 4 more in the playoffs, obviously along the interior. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Moro Ajomo playing very well. Then Brandon Graham came back off that torn triceps injury, which he suffered in week 12, to play in the Super Bowl. And Bryce Huff wasn't even active in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. He was a healthy scratch. Now, earlier in the year, he had to sit out a couple of games because of that wrist injury that he suffered. But think about the Eagles' formula for beating the Chiefs. Taking down Patrick Mahomes. Why did they make him look lost? Why did they fluster him with a pass rush? Getting home with 4, dropping back 7, and they were relentless with that front 4, with that pass rush. Bryce Huff wasn't even a part of the equation. So once again here, when you think about the future of Huff with Philadelphia, think about the Eagles' actions, right? A people's actions are very telling. Vic Fangio didn't like him from the start. After signing that huge deal, clearly he was a Howie Roseman signing, not a Vic Fangio signing. Barely played in the playoffs, didn't have him active for the Super Bowl. The Eagles let Josh Sweat walk, then they signed Josh Uche and Azeez Ojulari. Now the thing here with Howie Roseman, circling back, he will admit a mistake. He will move on quickly. He will try to flush it. And I do think that Bryce Huff has some trade value across the NFL, albeit at that salary cap number, although the salary is not guaranteed beyond 2025. But teams across the NFL are always starved for some pass rushing talent. And that's why I think teams could be in the market for a Huff trade, and that's why Philadelphia could just take whatever they can get for him at this point, because they also seem to be set along that defensive line. Huff is a 26-year-old edge rusher who wasn't a good scheme fit for the Eagles. He can be a good scheme fit somewhere else. I think that he can play. He was a UDFA who really propelled his career, progressed and improved. Just didn't happen with Philadelphia. And sometimes these free agent acquisitions, they don't always pan out. But Huff is also 1 year removed from having 10 sacks and 67 pressures in 2023 under Robert Saleh with the New York Jets. That was top 15 among all edge rushers in the game. And so if the Eagles can get off of that contract, I think they will. It's also a good draft class for defensive linemen. And even though the Eagles might only be able to get a late round pick, the contract is something that I think they would like to move off of. And if you're the acquiring team, if you trade for Bryce Huff, you're getting a 26-year-old who had a down year, but you saw in 2023 what he's capable of, and all you have to do is squander a 5th, 6th, maybe a 7th round pick. There are 8 teams that come to mind as far as being Bryce Huff trade destinations. These are teams who are either good scheme fits or who are in the need for a pass rusher or just make sense for Huff, right? The San Francisco 49ers. Guess who their defensive coordinator is? Robert Saleh, who was a huge fan of Bryce Huff. When you think about that Niners roster, opposite of Nick Bosa, they are extremely thin at defensive end. They have a lot of salary cap space as of right now. So Huff reuniting with Robert Saleh makes sense for the Niners defense, and it makes sense for Huff himself. They also have some late round picks that they can give up, a couple of fifth rounders. The Atlanta Falcons, they've been in the market and in need of pass rushing help to try to get after the quarterback. The Chicago Bears could use another pass rusher at that defensive end spot. The Los Angeles Chargers, they lost Joey Bosa. They could replace him cheaper with a player like Huff. The Tennessee Titans, they had an excellent defense last year. Will Levis was trash, but a lot of people lose sight of the fact that that Titans defense was good. They moved on from Harold Landry. Could they go after a player like Huff, especially if they don't take Abdul Carter #1 and they go with Cam Ward to get their future quarterback? The Green Bay Packers in need of some pass rushing help. The same can be said for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the New England Patriots still have some financial capital, and they seem to be very aggressive in trying to build around Drake May while he's on that rookie contract. And it wasn't all that bad for Huff in 2024 when you take a look at some of the analytics on only 182 pass rush snaps. Again, barely played for Philadelphia. He did have 17 hurries, and he had 20 pressures. One quarterback hit, and then with how he was graded out, he was in the green here with the overall Pro Football Focus grade of 68.3, a pass rush grade of 68.2. With the Jets, he was not known to be a good run defender, but the run defense grade there of 60.2, not bad either. What's also telling is that when he was with the Jets and had 10 sacks and 67 pressures, that was on under 50% of the snaps. So if he plays a little bit more, I think those numbers can be pretty damn good. The return will only be a late rounder. I do want to emphasize that, but don't freak out about it because you're moving off of that salary. You've brought in a couple of players who can help you replace Huff and maybe do an even better job. And I think Vic Fangio probably had a say in bringing in Azeez Ojulari to this 1-year, $3 million contract, $2.7 million cap hit, and a Josh Uche, 1 year, $1.9 million, $1.3 million cap hit. What's notable about these two players, they are comfortable rushing the passer as stand-up pass rushers. Uche, in particular, is comfortable with dropping back in coverage. With Huff, he made a name for himself with the Jets when he was in that 3-point stance or in that 4-point stance. He's more of a hand-in-the-dirt type of pass rusher, and he is not comfortable dropping back in coverage. And so you get rid of Huff, you get rid of that salary, and you sign Uche and Ojulari for very affordable contracts. This could be a Howie Roseman flex if he can work out a trade. Now, you still have needs at that defensive end spot, but you can address that in the NFL draft. This is a very good draft class for defensive linemen. And for Uche, I think that he could have a really good year for Philadelphia. Not a lot to make the team, but if he does, bend, twitch, speed coming off that edge. Him and Azeez Ojulari, similar players in that regard. And Uche, since 2022, has a pressure rate of 16.7%. That is 6th among all edge rushers in the NFL. Ojulari, he's 24 years old. He's going to be 25 in June. He has to prove that he can stay healthy. That's the biggest thing for him. But in 46 games and 30 starts, he has 22 sacks. If he can stay healthy, I think that he can be an impact player for this Eagles team. Which also brings me to this when we talk about roster construction. You think about some of the moves that the Eagles have made this offseason. I think Howie Roseman has let Josh Sweat and Milton Williams walk because he's very high on two young players who I think can break out in 2025. That's third-round pick from the 2024 NFL Draft, Jalix Hunt, who really came on in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl, and defensive tackle Moro Ajomo, who sneakily was one of the highest-graded pass-rushing defensive tackles in the NFL last year alongside Milton Williams. And he has an opportunity, with him being still young, to maybe even be better than Milton Williams. Jalix Hunt in the NFL playoffs had an overall Pro Football Focus grade of 74. That was 12th among 60 qualifying edge rushers. A pass rush grade of 76.5. That was 7th. He had 2 sacks, Balled out in the Super Bowl. That was 6th among edges. 9 pressures, also 6th, and had 6 hurries. That was 7th. And then Moro Ojomo throughout the entire 2024 season had an overall PFF grade of 68. That was 39th among 219 defensive tackles. A pass rush grade of 82.6, 5th at that position. Guess who was 2nd? Milton Williams. But the thing I want you to focus in on here for Moro Ojomo, the pass rush snaps. He's going to get more playing time with Milton Williams getting that bag from New England. 268 pass rush snaps last year, 64th at the position. That number is going to go up. Another year under his belt, I think, is going to help him. And I think that he could have a breakout year here in 2025, and the Eagles need it from that position. 26 hurries, that was 24th, and he had 31 pressures, again, on a limited snap count basis. And so the Eagles can afford to trade away Bryce Huff. They can afford to move off of Josh Sweat and Milton Williams if those other players who the Eagles are clearly very high on step up. If the Eagles didn't love them, they wouldn't make some of the moves that they've made this offseason. And I want to emphasize again, this is a position group along the defensive line that you can target in the NFL draft to also bulk up that depth. Real One roll call. If you enjoyed today's show, give me your real one down below. Give your feet a breather with Brunt. Awesome work boots here. And be sure to give me a follow on X and Instagram at Chase_Senior. In addition to all of the long-form Eagles content here on YouTube, I'm always talking birds on social media.